I had been dating Mom ever since freshman year in Principia College. And at that time, Principia had a waiting list for women to get into Principia College. And Mom was on the waiting list. And she did not get accepted for the first quarter of our freshman year. So she came after the first quarter. There was an opening. And it happened to be she was next on the list.
So was there a quota or something?
Well, they had an enrollment cap as to how many students
Oh,
they could take in the dormitory space at the dorm. Because Principia College is out in the country, the students had to live on campus in the dormitories.
I just wondered why you said there was a certain number for women.
Well, they knew how many beds they had in the dormitories.
Oh, I see, okay.
And in the case of the women, there are always more women enrolled that wanted to come to Principia College than men. And
really?
And I got in without any problem. And they had space. But women, there were more that wanted to come, and so they had a waiting list. And Mom ended up being on the waiting list. And so over Christmas, as I recalled the story that she told me, she didn't know whether she'd be accepted, and she and her parents kept checking with Principia, and they said, well, we don't have an opening yet. Well, sometime around right after Christmas, they decided on their own to send her to Principia College by train.
Oh, wow.
She packed and came, and when she arrived, they said, we just have a space for you.
So they sent her
And
not
she
knowing
came.
if there would be...
That's the story
Wow.
that I understand. She came on the faith that there'd be
Yeah,
an opening
very gutsy.
there for her.
I hope they had a return ticket in case.
Yeah, right.
And Principia College was on the quarter system. You went roughly 2.5 months. You took courses from late September until early December. That was a quarter, and then you came back after a 3-week Christmas break, and then you had winter quarter, which was from mid-January to March, and then you had another vacation.
Cool.
And till the summer. And so during winter quarter, Ellen Moore showed up at Principia College. And in those days, they had required dances that you had to go to. And all the men had to go to these dances. It was a requirement, and as did the girls. And it was really a dress-up thing. Fellas always wore coat and ties, and the girls dressed up in pretty party dresses. And so I went to one of the required dances during winter quarter, and at this particular dance, the girls had cards that you would sign up to dance with them, and they might be 12 different dances or 15, and any guy that wanted to dance with someone would go up and ask if they could, and she'd put you on the list as to wherever she had an opening on her card. And so you'd dance one dance number, and then the next guy that was on the list would come up. Well, I saw Mom. I thought, who's that pretty girl there? I'd like to dance with her. So I went up and asked for a dance with Ellen Moore. And I got on her list and danced with her, and I thought, she is wonderful. Well, I had not dated much at all before then. I never had a steady girlfriend, and so for a few times during our freshman year, I did invite Mom, Ellen, to join me, and we might have gone to the little soda fountain on campus in the evening to get sodas, and we may have gone to another dance. And then during the rest of college, we dated off and on, and she was very popular. She was, as you know, very, very pretty. And she had guys lined up to dance. And I recall when they asked it, I would be the third on the list to get a date, and she couldn't dance. So once in a while I got a date with her. And this went on until our senior year of college. And so she came for the fall quarter of senior year and then didn't return. And I never knew the reason why she didn't return the rest. She didn't graduate from Principia College. And but she came, and that fall quarter, and we did date, because I lived down in Elsa, rented a room because my sister had come that year as a freshman, and my family financially couldn't easily have two kids in college at the same time, and so I worked, and I had to work as much as I could to earn money, and I lived rented a room in a house in Little Ellis, Illinois, and provided half my meals
Oh, you
myself.
did?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
But Mom would occasionally walk down from the college, and we'd meet, and we'd just walk around Ellis or something like that, and then she didn't come back after Christmas, and I had never known the reason why. She didn't graduate from Principia College.
Well, you must know.
And
now.
so we started corresponding. And so I did not see her from that winter until March of a year later, after I graduated from Officer Candidate School. And after I graduated from Officer Candidate School, I thought, well, we've corresponded back and forth. Now, in those days, a phone call across the country was very expensive. I couldn't afford to call her very often. So we wrote letters back and forth. And as I got near graduating, I didn't know what would happen to me in the Navy for 3 years of required service. And if you went through the officer program, you had to go in for 3. You had to sign up for 3 years of active duty. If you went in as a listed man, you could go in for 2 years and fulfill your duty. But I decided, as a college graduate, I wanted to go ahead and try to become an officer, which I qualified for. So I ended up on the Northampton. But before I went to the Northampton, I flew out to California, my first time in California, to see Ellen. And we did some sightseeing, and she fixed a nice picnic, and we went up to a lake near Santa Barbara, California, where she lived at that time. And she wanted to also take me into Los Angeles. She said a favorite place I like to go in Los Angeles, and she'd actually, in their younger years, had lived in Pacific Palisades, which is a suburb just inside Los Angeles. So she wanted to go to the farmer's market, which was a big kind of open air market, but it was open 7 days a week, year round, and all kinds of little shops, food shops and places that sold souvenirs and postcards and all kinds of little things, baseball hats and whatnot. But they had a restaurant she liked there, so she wanted to take me there. And so we went, and we were at the restaurant, and afterwards we just decided to walk around the neighborhood. And we happened to walk past a jewelry store. And for some reason, I don't know what it was, but some reason we decided to go in, and we came out with an engagement ring afterwards. And she proudly wore it home, and her mother, being a very discerning mother, suddenly realized her daughter was wearing a ring. How did this happen to this guy you haven't seen for 15 months? And that was the start of our life. And before I left California after this quick visit, because I was headed to Europe to find the Northampton that I'd be assigned to, her mother and Mom started thinking about wedding plans. It was decided it would be August 7th of that year, as long as I could get off the ship and wherever it was and get out to California. So it worked out very fortuitously that that date worked. And of course I had no idea. I hadn't even been on the ship. I didn't know what it was ahead of me. But it all worked out very happily.
Let's hear how a mother prayed at a time when her grown son was doing something that interfered with her work.
Christian Science is based entirely on the inspired word of the Bible. Mrs. Eddy had a wonderful revelation after she studied the Bible and the healings that Christ Jesus had brought about, and she became aware of a universal law of love. There's a very favorite sentence of mine that's in the book that she wrote entitled Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, and I use it as a companion book to the Bible. The sentence I particularly love says that healing is based upon its divine principle love, underlying, overlying, and encompassing all true being. Now just think about that for a moment. It's a wonderful thing. When anything fearful comes to my thought, I sometimes remember that love is underlying and overlying and encompassing all true being, encompassing my children and my home, my family, the whole world. I had an illustration of this in my life. At the time, the work I was engaged in, I worked out of my home. I had an office there, and it just worked out beautifully because my husband and 4 of my 5 children left first thing in the morning, and most of my calls came in the morning. I had an older son, really was a young adult, that had come back to live with us for a while, and he worked all night long. And then he came home and went to sleep. But this particular time, my son came home, and instead of going to bed, he started making numerous calls, and we only had one phone line at the time. I was patient. But after several calls had gone on and more were continuing, I discovered that what he was doing was making sort of comparison shopping calls. And I asked him to please refrain for a while because I was expecting calls. And he knew it was important to me, but at the time I'm sure he was very tired and he felt he had a right to be making the calls, and he didn't stop. Well, I was getting angry, and I just remember sitting down on my sofa thinking of the calls that needed to come in for my work, and I just reached out to God. I just relinquished it all humanly and just reached out with all my heart to God, and instantly this thought came to me that the law of love, the law of divine love, was in operation at that very moment. It was governing me and my thoughts and my actions and my words and my feelings, and it was certainly governing my son. Now, just for a few moments, literally that's all it was, I just was so conscious of that universal law of love in operation. Moments later, literally moments later, my son dashed up the stairs with such excitement, and he said he would pay to have a separate phone line installed in our home. Later, he called to find out the expense of it and ordered it, and several days later, the phone was put in, and this left my phone line exclusively mostly for my work, and it was such a blessing. And it's such a wonderful thing to see that I didn't have to exercise a great sense of human will. Human will is never up to the job, I've found. But God's will, which is always good, brings harmony into our experience when we understand that that universal law is in operation. The Bible says, and we've known and believed the love that God hath to us. God is love, and he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. Human love, of course, seems variable. It can be very loving and warm and tender and kind one moment, and then another, with almost no human explanation, it can seem to be cold and resentful or turn against us. But God's love never changes, never changes. And when we understand that we live in that love and we move in that love, then we're always safe.
That was Ellen Thompson of Baldwin, Missouri.